In the heart of a brutal winter storm, when the world itself seemed to freeze under the weight of nature's fury, a lonely rancher named Samuel trudged through the endless snow. The wind howled like lost souls in the dark, rattling against the wooden frame of his small cabin. For years, Samuel had lived alone, his only companions the creak of the timber walls and the distant cries of coyotes. But that night, destiny was about to knock on his door in the most unexpected way. He had always believed that winter was a mirror of his own heart, cold, barren, and unyielding. Samuel's wife had died 5 years before, taken by a fever no doctor could cure. Since then, his life had become a cycle of chores, silence, and memories that haunted him at night. But on that storm-ridden evening, as he carried firewood inside, he heard something faint, something human. At first, he thought it was the storm playing tricks on him. But then, there it was again, a muffled cry. Grabbing his lantern and rifle, Samuel pushed into the storm, his boots sinking deep into the drifts. The sound led him to a cluster of half-buried bushes, where he saw a sight that stole his breath, a young Comanche girl, perhaps 12 years old, curled protectively around a boy no older than 6. Their clothes were tattered, their faces pale, lips trembling from the bite of winter. The boy's tiny hands clung to his sister's shawl as if letting go meant certain death. Samuel hesitated. He had heard the stories, tales of raids, of conflicts between settlers and the Comanche. Fear and mistrust had poisoned both sides for years. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They were just children, abandoned to the mercy of a storm that would not forgive weakness. Without another thought, Samuel scooped the boy into his arms and motioned for the girl to follow. She looked at him with wide, wary eyes, but desperation outweighed fear. Step by heavy step, he led them back to his cabin. Inside, the warmth of the fire began to chase away the frost. Samuel laid the boy, who was barely conscious, by the hearth, covering him in blankets. The girl sat close, her eyes never leaving Samuel. She said nothing, but her guarded posture spoke louder than words. Samuel offered her bread and water, but she only gave it to her brother first, as though her duty to him outweighed her own hunger. That silent act of sacrifice reminded Samuel of his own lost family, and for the first time in years, something stirred in his heart. As the hours passed, Samuel learned their names through fragments of broken English. The girl was Ayoka, which meant, she brought happiness, and the boy was Dakota, meaning, friend to all. Their parents had been attacked while moving camp, and in the chaos, the siblings had fled into the woods. They had wandered for days until the storm nearly claimed them. Samuel realized they had no one else. Without him, they would not last the night. The next days were not easy. Samuel cared for the children, nursing Dakota back to health, while Ayoka remained distant, watching him like a hawk. Trust was not given easily, it had to be earned. Samuel understood this better than anyone. Slowly, he allowed them into his world. He showed Ayoka how to feed the horses, how to gather wood, how to mend simple things around the cabin. In return, she began to teach him small Comanche words, laughing softly when he fumbled the pronunciation. It was the first laughter that had filled the cabin since his wife had passed. Yet, challenges loomed like shadows. The nearest town, filled with suspicious settlers, would not welcome Comanche children. Supplies were running low, and Samuel knew he couldn't provide for 3 on his own through the harshest part of winter. One night, as he sat by the fire, he wondered if he had made a mistake bringing them in. But then, Dakota stirred in his sleep and whispered, "Brother Samuel," in his broken accent. That word, brother, cut through Samuel's doubt. He could not abandon them. They were no longer strangers, they were family. The greatest test came when a group of riders appeared on the horizon, men from the town who had heard rumors of Indians hiding on Samuel's ranch. Their eyes carried suspicion and their words, hostility. "You best hand them over," one of them demanded. "Ain't safe mixing blood like that. You'll bring nothing but trouble." Samuel stood tall, the storm of his grief finally replaced by a fire of defiance. "They're just children," he said firmly. "And they're under my care." When the men threatened force, Samuel raised his rifle, not in hatred, but in protection. "You'll have to go through me," he declared. The standoff seemed endless, the winter wind biting at their faces. At last, the men rode away, muttering threats. Samuel knew this was only the beginning of the struggle, but he felt no regret. For the first time in years, he had a purpose greater than his own survival. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Samuel, Ayoka, and Dakota deepened. The children slowly began to smile again, and Samuel's cabin, once a place of silence, echoed with laughter and warmth. Ayoka began to trust him, not just as a rescuer, but as a protector and teacher. She told him stories from her people, tales of honor, of spirits, of love that endured even through hardship. Samuel, in turn, shared memories of his wife, teaching them the songs she used to hum. Together, they built a bridge over the gulf of pain and mistrust, one day at a time. By the time spring thawed the snow, Samuel was no longer the lonely rancher of before. He was a guardian, a father, a man reborn through the bond he had forged with two lost souls. And in their eyes, he saw something he thought he had lost forever: hope. The story of Samuel, Ayoka, and Dakota was not just one of survival. It was a story of love that defied fear, of honor that stood against prejudice, and of destiny that bound three lives together in the most unexpected of ways. In the heart of a brutal storm, they had found not just shelter, but a home. And sometimes, the coldest night is what it takes to awaken the warmest bond.